Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to continue from where we left off last week in the video, how to plan a UI design project. So this is going to be part 2, where we're going to take all of that planning that we did in the first part and turn it into a design in today's video. So if you missed last week's video, I'm gonna link that on the screen for you right now. I highly recommend you go watch that first, then come back to this video. I go in depth about how I plan my UI design project, and I think it gives you some good insight on what I do before my usual Adobe XD design tutorials. I think it's a pretty cool video, so make sure you check that out, and then come back to this one. So with all that said, this is what we were left with after the last video. This is our Milanote board. Milanote is a program that I like to use to plan and organize all of my creative projects with. So we have a to-do list, and today we're going to be creating a low-fidelity wireframe, creating a style guide, and a high-fidelity wireframe, aka we're finishing the design. So we're going to be creating our Bengal tiger landing page for an endangered species website in today's video. So let's go ahead and take a look at our mood board. We just have some Bengal tiger images. I have some sample typography we might be using, as well as some colors. We're going to be importing them into Adobe XD here in a second. And then we also have a sketch that I did, and I've got some basic ideas written out along with this. So we're going to turn this into our wireframe. So let's go ahead and head over to Adobe XD and get started with today's tutorial. Here in Adobe XD, I've just opened up a 1920 by 1080 artboard, and I've just saved it as a design file. So what we're first going to be doing is turning on our layout grid, and I'm going to leave everything just as is. We're going to be using the 12 column grid, and then I'm going to lower the opacity on this way down to about 8% or so I can see the elements that we're going to be working with a little bit clearer through this. So the first thing we're going to be doing is just designing our wireframe, and I'm going to do this using some basic shapes and some small amounts of typography here and there. So I'm just going to start here in the top left-hand corner, and I'm going to fill this as a gray color, and I always like to round my shapes off. And so that's just going to hold the placeholder of our navigation. Then we're also going to have some kind of search bar or button over here on the side. So we'll just put that right there. And I do have my sketch open on my computer. You guys just can't see it. It's on the other side of my monitor. So I am looking at that and trying to translate my idea from my sketch into my wireframe. So we do have this large section about right here. Let's see, where is the halfway point? So there's the browser halfway point. So we'll probably put the image right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this just like these other shapes, except I'm going to drag the opacity down just so we can see that a little bit better. I'm also going to drag a big line going through like this to create an X. So this is going to be our image. And then we're going to have some typography. And a lot of people, when they wireframe, they like to actually put the typography out. First, I like to do basic shapes, and then I like to add my typography. So we're just going to use this rectangle as our heading. So we'll make that a little bit bigger. And then for our body font, we'll just scale it in like that. And we'll call this a paragraph. So we might have 2 paragraphs of text there, and then we might have some kind of button. So we'll symbolize that like that. We also have the previous and next buttons. So we'll grab a rectangle and we'll put those in here. And for now, we'll just put these somewhere down here in the bottom. And we'll put that one there and that one over there. And then we had some statistics on the right-hand side. So I'll just drag one of these over. So basically that is pretty much it as far as this stage goes. This is real basic, but it gets the idea of kind of where I want to place things out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add typography into this and replace some of these rectangle shapes with that actual type and drag in some icons and see how that's starting to look. So the first font we're going to be using is called Playfair Display, and it's going to be for our headings. So I'm just going to type out Bengal Tiger. And I want to lowercase the first letter. If you watched the last video, I talked about how I wanted to do that just for some kind of unique design aspect. And we'll change that to Playfair Display. I'm going to bump this up to a really large size. We'll try 70 to begin with. And for the weight, we'll bump that up to bold. So I'm going to delete this, and we're going to put this in its place. But I am going to drag this quite a ways down the artboard. So about 380 spacing from the top. For our paragraph text, we actually have this. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Back in Milanote, we have this copy text right here. So I'm just gonna copy this. And I'll grab my type tool and we'll just drag out a text area that's 3 columns wide, and we'll just paste that in. So our body font is going to be Roboto, so we'll go ahead and switch that over, and we'll put that at 17 size font, and then we're going to go with a regular weight. Now for the line height, we're going to set that to 26 to give us a little bit more spacing, and I'm also going to have some paragraph separation of 20 pixels. So let's just drag the bottom of this text area to the last bit of text there. And for the spacing, I do want a large amount of space below this. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this value. This is probably gonna be what we're gonna have with the rest of our design. I'm gonna leave this at 60 spacing below the heading. And then below this, we can have a button, and it's just gonna be a text button. How you can help, and again, we're gonna lowercase that H. And for this spacing, it doesn't need to be quite as large, so I'm gonna put it 40 spacing below our paragraphs, and we're gonna go ahead and change this to a bold. All right, so I'm gonna use a program called Nucleo. It's gonna allow me to drag in some icons. So here in the box icon, we're just gonna look for a menu bar. So I'll drag that into our pasteboard, and we're also going to need a search magnifying glass. So we'll drag that in as well, and then we'll close that. If you've watched any of my tutorials before, I have a trick for aligning icons together. I like to drag out a square, and I'm gonna set this to 24 pixels by 24 pixels. I'm gonna remove the border, and we'll just center these together. And I'm actually gonna send that behind the icon. I'm gonna select the rectangle and lower the opacity to 0. And I'm going to group it with the icon with Command G or Control G. And I also created a duplicate of that. We'll center that one up with the magnifying glass and Command G or Control G to group that together. So that just allows us to have some good spacing in between our icons and around our icons, and I think it looks pretty good. So from here, I'm gonna drag the search icon into the corner. And my idea with this is when the user selects this, it will pop out a search field. So we're just gonna have the icon here in the corner. And over here on this side, we're gonna have the navigation icon. And we'll put this 45 pixels from the top. I think that'll be a pretty good distance. So we'll have to align this one centered up with that. So we have 45 and 45. For our navigation, I wanna keep things nice and simple. So we're just gonna start adding some basic text here. So we're gonna have the word endangered. And I'm gonna set this to Playfair. Display instead of Roboto, and we'll bump it up to 20 since it needs to be a little bit larger since it is a heading. This is probably like an H3 or H4, and we're gonna make sure it's on bold, and we'll just align that up with this icon. And I'm gonna align this to the baseline of the icon because if it's on center, it's a little bit off. So I'm just gonna go baseline, and let's try 20 spacing for now. Then I'm gonna hold Alt and create a duplicate, and then here I'm going to put a slash. And the slash is gonna be about 12 pixels beside that. And again, I'm just playing around with spacing. None of this is final, I'm just testing things out. I'll create a duplicate. And here we'll just put the name of this endangered page, which is Bengal Tiger. And we're again going to lowercase that b. So we have some basic navigation now. We've got our navigation icon, which can expand that menu. We're saying this is the endangered species list, and this is the Bengal tiger page. So I think that looks pretty cool. For our stats over here on the right, we actually have these in Milanote, so I'm gonna go ahead and open that back up. And here in our long form, we can just grab all of these, I'm gonna copy them. Then over here, I'm just gonna create a text box and paste them in, and we'll just put these off into the pasteboard somewhere. We'll stick them over here. So I think what we're gonna do for this is I'm gonna grab one of these texts up here, and we're gonna keep this Playfair display at 20 size font and bold, and then below it, we're gonna have that Roboto paragraph size font. So Roboto maybe 17 size font and regular weight. And we'll just kind of touch those together. So we'll have our first stat, which we're gonna go with the number of the remaining. So we'll just say 2,500. And then down below here, we'll say remaining. And again, I'm going to lowercase the first letter. And we can group those together with Command G or Control G. And then we'll just create two more because we're gonna show 3 stats. Next, we'll go with 10 feet. And this is gonna be the average length. And for the last stat, let's do the weight. So we'll go with 550 pounds. All right, so we have those 3 groupings. Let's just grab all of those and align that with the top of the body text, just like that. And let's go ahead and delete these other statistics. And for spacing here, we're not gonna really worry with it. We're just gonna put about 30. And we'll just match that up. See how that looks? That looks pretty good. For our navigation, so we're gonna have a next and a previous. For now, let's just do that in text. So I'm gonna grab that text up there again. This is 20 size Playfair display bold, and we'll just put in next. And then this one is gonna be previous. So we'll just delete these squares and we'll just put this text in its place. And since we have these stats aligning here on the left of this column, I think I'm gonna align the next there for now. And we're gonna put 45 spacing from the bottom of the artboard to match our navigation. So we have equal height on the top and the bottom. And we'll drag this one over here on the left. So for now, I'm gonna call this our low fidelity wireframe. So I'm just gonna go up here and call this our wireframe. And I'm also going to export this entire artboard as an image. So switching back over to Milanote, we have prepared some boards already for the wireframe. So right here in our design section, I've created the wireframe board, and I'm just gonna drag in this image so that I have this to reference at any time. So now we have our sketch and our wireframe stored in Milanote. I've also went ahead and duplicated our Adobe XD file, and I've named it Low Fidelity Wireframe version 1.0.0. And I'm just gonna drag that Adobe XD file anywhere in Milanote, and it creates this for me, so I can download this file and access it at any time. And I'm just gonna drop that into our design files column. So I like to back up all of my stages of my designs because I'm not the best at working non-destructive, meaning I overwrite some of the previous steps I've done in my designs. So if I ever need to go back to any version or any state of my design, I can do that here in Milanote by having these files here. So not only do we have this file that we can update and add more pages if we want, we also have the exported versions and a board for that. And so with that, we're done with our low fidelity wireframe. So I'm gonna go ahead and check this off. Now we're gonna treat this like a full-fledged project, and we're gonna be creating a style guide along with our high fidelity wireframe. So if we were to create more pages, we'd have that style guide in place. We're gonna be creating that and the high fidelity wireframe simultaneously in the next step. So let's head back to Adobe XD. All right, so I'm gonna select the wireframe artboard and hit Command D or Control D to create a duplicate, and we'll just name this one Design. So first off, let's just go ahead and delete these lines that are over top of this rectangle. And actually, let's just delete the rectangle itself. So first thing we're gonna do is drag in one of the Bengal tiger images. I'm gonna go with the one with the white background because we're gonna have the white as our background anyway, and this way I don't have to crop it out. So it's gonna go ahead and open that up. So I'm just gonna drag that image in, and it's pretty large, and we'll just scale it down. I'm just gonna hold Shift and Alt while I do that, and we'll just kind of put this in the corner of the artboard. So I'm gonna send it all the way to the back using Command Shift, left square bracket key. And I'm going to try to keep in mind where this box was located in the wireframe. And so I'm just gonna scale this tiger to actually fit. So I'm just gonna hold Shift as I drag up, and we're gonna try to get this, like, I guess you would call this the cheek, the side of the face here, like pretty close to this edge of the body, but not too close. So we're gonna give it enough space, but we want it to kind of flow a little bit with it. So I might actually try to match the space between the heading and the body, make it consistent, I guess. So something like that. All right, so I've just scaled up our Bengal tiger here in the background. I think that's looking pretty good. Next thing we're gonna do is add some color into this. So I'm gonna paste these colors in, and then I'm gonna open my assets panel, and I'm just gonna click the plus to add all three of them here. And then for now, we'll just leave them up there because we're actually gonna reuse those in our style guide here in a minute. All right, so first things first is we need to set all the text to this lighter gray, and then we will go through and add the darker gray color to the rest of it. So I'm just gonna select every element, even our icons, and grab all of them and set them to that lighter color gray. So also I'm going to turn off our layout grid just so we can see the colors a little bit better. So now everything's that light gray, so let's select some stuff that we might want as the dark gray. So first off, I want these two buttons to be darker gray. And then inside of each of these groupings, I'm going to set the small heading we have in there with the statistic as the darker gray color. I'm also gonna do the how can you help button to that darker gray as well. The body text obviously is gonna be lighter, and I think we're gonna keep the navigation elements lighter as well. We're just gonna keep those nice and subtle because we want the user to mainly focus on this area of the design. For the Bengal tiger heading text, I think I'm gonna try this in the orange color that we sampled. It's kind of an orangish brown. I think that looks pretty good. That adds some color in there. And I'm also gonna do that up here in the heading as well. All right, so next, this is going to be page 5 of the animals. And so we're gonna actually have that number in here behind the animal name. So when you click next, it'll go to 06, or when you click back, it'll go to 04. So I'm just gonna type in 05, and you can put in whatever number. You can do 01. I just don't like to do 01 in designs because I like to see what other numbers look like. So we're gonna go with 05, and we're gonna set this to Playfair Display. I'm gonna bump this all the way up to 200 pixels, and we're going to set this to bold. I'm also gonna add our light color gray to this, and I'm just going to drag this behind our text somewhere. I think I'm gonna split the middle of this text right here on the edge of the R in tiger. So once we've done that, I'm just gonna drag down visually so we have a nice overlap, but we can still see it. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm gonna hit Command Shift left square bracket key to send it all the way to the back. We do have that tiger picture here, so it is behind that, so we need to bring it forward 1. So Command right square bracket key will bring it 1 layer forward, and we have that behind our text. Now I'm just going to drag the opacity on this down until I'm happy with it. And somewhere around there looks pretty good. So just a nice little subtle detail of the page. The page doesn't have to be a full-blown element. We can add that just like that. So next thing I'm gonna do is on the next button, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm just gonna grab this and I'm gonna change this to a 6. So we're going to the 6th page. And we'll scale this one down to 70 to match the size of our heading up here. And we're going to align this with the bottom of the next text. And we're just gonna align it on the left side of the next text as well. And then I'm just gonna go from there and just kind of give it some overlap. So we're just visually making this button. And then I'm gonna hold Alt and drag straight over. And just for now, I'm gonna drag the opacity all the way up to 100% so we can see it. And this time we're gonna align this one a little bit off to the side. So we're gonna do the same thing we did with the title. We're gonna take the halfway point of this text box and line it up with the back edge of this text. And all the other positioning should be fine. We're just gonna change this to a 4 and line that up like so. So now what we need to do is we actually need to set this as a fill color. So I'm gonna grab a square and I'm gonna remove the border, and with the eyedropper tool, I'm just gonna select this color, add that to our swatches, and then we can delete this. We can select all of these, turn the fill all the way up, and we'll just set it to that color so that we have that color actually as a swatch instead of a opaque element. So now we can actually see it over here on top of the tiger. So I'm gonna hit the live preview to see what this looks like so far, and to make sure we don't need any drop shadow on this element, which I don't believe we do. I think it's actually looking pretty good. So once I'm done with this, I'm gonna go ahead and start to create my style guide on this so that I could make more pages. So I'm just going to create an empty artboard. I'm gonna hit the A key and just grab the 1920 by 1080, and we'll just call this style guide. All right, so that is my simple style guide done. So now I have all of my typography easily displayed here. I'm using Playfair Display and also Roboto. That's my font pairing. Then I've got a good visual here. This is the heading and this is the body, and this is what they look like and the spacing and how they should look together. Then we've got each of the colors that we're using throughout the design here as well. We can also add that lighter version of the gray that we were using. So let's match all of this up. Do that. And then we'll set that to that gray. I'm gonna copy that text and put that as the fill. And then we've got our 2 icons. So if we were to add more icons, we could populate this here. And then we've got our simple buttons so we can show different variants of the buttons we're using. So just a basic style guide. I'm gonna break this off into its own Adobe XD file and save it. And we'll switch it back over to Milanote real quick. So back here in Milanote, I've saved out my style guide into its own file so I can update this and work on this as I need. And then I can save all of those elements as symbols and use them throughout Adobe XD. If you know how Adobe XD works with symbols, it's a really great process. So I'm gonna drag that up here into my design files. And then I've also saved out the main file as Bengal Tiger Design version 1.0.0 as well. So this is the first version of the design. So now I have my 3 files that I'm gonna be working in all saved up. The low fidelity is kind of a backup one, just to have it. The style guide is a file that I'm gonna be working on myself, and if I had a team, we could be updating that and putting the different versions here in this. And we could even have its own column for style guide in the different versions. Same thing goes with all these files. Then we've got the main file we're gonna be working in, which is the Bengal Tiger design file. So with that, we can head back over to our to-do list and finally check off creating a style guide and creating our high fidelity wireframe. So that is our how to plan a UI design project now completed from the planning stages to the completion stage. And here is what our design looks like. That's what we have created throughout all this planning. That is my process for designing a UI design project. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of 2-part series where I showcase the tools and what I do to create a project like this. So that's pretty much it for today's video. Thank you to Milanote for sponsoring today's video and this entire series. If you'd like to check out Milanote for planning your next creative project, I have a link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. That'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe for more design related content. Make sure you have that notification bell on so you don't miss a video. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.